The station floated in the dark like a metal seed caught between dead worlds. It was called Apex Threshold, and it had been built for one reason only: to host the most important biological event in the galaxy every 100 years. Species came from every arm of the Milky Way. They brought their scientists, their warriors, their politicians, and most importantly, they brought proof of what their homeworld could create. The Apex Summit was not just a conference. It was a competition. Every species presented the deadliest predator their planet had ever produced, and at the end, the Council would vote on which world had given birth to the most dangerous hunter in known space. Winning meant more than pride. It meant funding, respect, and a seat at tables where the real decisions about the galaxy were made. Captain Lena Vasquez arrived on a small frigate with a crew of 4. She walked off the ship carrying a single bag over her shoulder and wearing a plain gray uniform. She had dark hair pulled back tight, brown skin weathered by years of fieldwork, and hands covered in small scars that she never bothered to explain. She smiled easily and often, which made her face look warm. But something about the way her eyes stayed steady while she smiled made the aliens around her feel a little uneasy without knowing why. She was Earth's only representative. This fact alone caused a stir. The Cretharians had sent a delegation of 40, including armed escorts and a containment unit the size of a small building. The Gorvathi brought an entire warship, painted in ceremonial colors. The Malurians arrived in a beautiful vessel that moved through space like a living thing, carrying a pressurized aquatic tank that glowed blue from within. And Earth sent one woman with a bag. Threx Valon, the head of the Interstellar Biological Council, noticed this immediately. He was 9 feet tall, built like something between an insect and a lizard, with a hard shell across his back and mandibles that clicked when he was annoyed. He had been running these summits for 3 cycles now, and he had never seen a species treat the event with such apparent carelessness. He found Lena in the reception hall, eating something from a small container she had brought with her. "Captain Vasquez," he said, his voice deep and translated through the device on his chest. "I trust your journey was acceptable." "It was fine," she said. "Good food on the ship, that always helps." "I notice your delegation is small." "Just me," she said. "Didn't need anyone else." Threx Valon's mandibles clicked twice. "The summit is a significant event. Most species send their finest teams." Lena looked up at him and smiled that unsettling smile. "I'm sure they do." He left her alone after that, but the impression stayed with him like a bad taste. The first day was dedicated to presentations. The great hall of the station had been arranged in a circle, with each delegation given a platform, holographic projectors, and enough space to display their predator in full detail. The lighting was dramatic. The atmosphere was electric. Every species wanted to win, and every species believed they would. The Cretharians went first. Threx Valon himself took the stage, and the lights dimmed as a massive hologram filled the center of the room. It was the Scarvex, a creature that looked like a 6-legged panther wrapped in black glass. It had no eyes. Instead, it hunted using electrical fields, sensing the bioelectric signatures of its prey from hundreds of meters away. When it struck, it discharged 40,000 volts through specialized organs along its spine, stopping the heart of anything it touched. The hologram showed the Scarvex in action, gliding through dark forests, invisible, silent, and then a flash of blue-white light and a creature 3 times its size collapsing dead in an instant. The Cretharian delegation stamped their feet in approval. Several other species murmured in genuine respect. Next came the Gorvathi. Dorvax, their leader, was enormous even by the standards of his kind. He looked like an armored bear that had been built for war, with thick plates of natural bone covering his chest and shoulders. He presented the Ironmaw, a pack predator that hunted by slamming its massive forelimbs into the ground, creating tremors that collapsed burrows and flushed prey into the open. The hologram showed a group of Ironmaws working together, shaking the earth until an entire hillside crumbled, and dozens of smaller creatures came running out in panic. The iron maws picked them off one by one with jaws that could crush stone. Dorvax crossed his arms and dared anyone to look unimpressed. The Malurians presented next. Sylvan was their speaker, a slender, graceful being whose skin shifted between soft blue and pale silver, with bioluminescent patterns that rippled when she was emotional. She was nervous, but her presentation was beautiful. The abyssal thorn was a deep-sea predator that lived at pressures that would flatten most living things. It hunted in total darkness, using vibrations in the water to build a complete three-dimensional picture of its environment. It killed by driving a bone-hard spike through its prey at speeds faster than sound underwater. The hologram showed the creature drifting in black water, then a sudden flash of movement, and a target reduced to fragments. One by one, the species presented. Venomous flyers, acid-spitting ambush predators, parasites that consumed hosts from the inside. Each one was more terrifying than the last. Each delegation was proud, loud, and confident. Then it was Earth's turn. Lena stood up from her seat. She walked to the platform slowly, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She carried nothing. She activated no hologram. She brought no samples, no containment units, no dramatic lighting. She just stood there, hands in her pockets, and looked around the room. "I'd like to present tomorrow," she said, "if that's allowed." The silence lasted 3 full seconds before the murmuring began. Threx Valon's mandibles clicked rapidly. Dorvax let out a low grunt that might have been a laugh. Several delegates whispered to each other, and Lena did not need a translator to know what they were saying. They thought she had nothing. They thought Earth had sent a representative with an empty hand because their world had nothing worth showing. Threx Valon spoke carefully. "It is unusual, but the rules allow a 1-day extension. You may present tomorrow, Captain." "Thank you," Lena said and sat back down. After the session ended, the delegates filed out in groups, talking loudly about the presentations, arguing about which predator was the most impressive. Lena stayed behind, leaning against a railing near the observation windows, watching the dead moon turn slowly below. Sylvan found her there. The Malurian moved quietly, her light flickering with curiosity. "Captain Vasquez," she said softly, "may I ask you something?" "Sure." "What is Earth's apex predator?" Lena turned to look at her. The starlight caught the scars on her hands. She smiled, not the polite smile she had given Threx Valon, but something sharper, something with teeth behind it. "That depends," Lena said, "on how you define predator." Sylvan's bioluminescence flickered once fast, the Malurian equivalent of a shiver. She opened her mouth to ask another question, but Lena had already pushed off the railing and was walking away, her footsteps echoing down the empty corridor. Behind her, the stars burned cold and endless, and somewhere among them, a small blue world full of terrible things waited for its name to be called. The next morning, the council chamber was fuller than it had been the day before. Word had spread through the station overnight that the human delegate had delayed her presentation, and opinions were split cleanly in two. Half the delegates believed she was stalling because Earth had nothing worth showing. The other half, a much smaller, quieter group, were not so sure. There was something about the way she had stood on that platform with empty hands and no fear that did not fit the picture of someone who had come unprepared. Sylvan was in the second group. She had not slept well. Threx Valon called the chamber to order and announced the formal judging criteria. The winner would be determined across 5 categories: raw lethality, environmental adaptability, kill efficiency, sensory capability, and ecological dominance. Each predator would be scored, and the council would vote based on the total assessment. He read the criteria in a slow, official voice, and then turned to Lena. "Captain Vasquez, the floor is yours." Lena walked to the platform again. This time, she activated the holographic projector, but instead of showing a creature, she pulled up the profile of the Cretharian Scarvex that had been presented the day before. Its image filled the center of the room, sleek, black, crackling with stored electricity. Threx Valon stiffened. "Captain, this is meant to be your presentation, not a review of others." "I know," Lena said. "I'm using a comparative method. The Council rules allow it. Section 14, paragraph 6, I checked this morning." Threx Valon said nothing. She was correct. Lena turned to face the room. "The Scarvex is incredible," she said. "I mean that. 40,000 volts, silent approach, electrical field sensing. It is a masterpiece of evolution." She paused. "But I have a question. Can it hunt in cold environments?" A Cretharian scientist in the delegation shifted uncomfortably. "The Scarvex is adapted to temperate and tropical biomes. Its bioelectric system requires a minimum ambient temperature to function efficiently." "So below a certain temperature it cannot hunt," Lena said. "It becomes less effective." "It stops," Lena said gently. "I read the published research. Below 12 degrees standard the discharge organs fail. The Scarvex becomes prey." The Cretharian scientist did not respond. Threx Valon's mandibles were very still. Lena switched the hologram to the Gorvathi Ironmaw. The massive creature filled the room, all armor and muscle and earth-shaking power. Dorvax watched with narrowed eyes. "The Ironmaw," Lena said. "Possibly the most physically powerful predator I have ever seen documented. Those seismic strikes are extraordinary, but it hunts in packs. Can a single Ironmaw take down large prey alone?" Dorvax spoke from his seat, his voice like gravel rolling downhill. "The Ironmaw is a social hunter. It is strongest with its pack. So alone, it is vulnerable." Dorvax's jaw tightened. "All things are less without their kind." "Fair enough," Lena said. She switched to the abyssal thorn. Sylvan's light dimmed slightly as her predator appeared in the hologram. "The abyssal thorn," Lena said. "A perfect deep-sea killer. Nothing in its environment can match it. But what happens when you take it out of that environment?" Sylvan answered quietly. "It cannot survive outside deep ocean pressure zones. It would die within minutes on the surface." "So the most dangerous predator on your world can only exist in one specific place," Lena said. There was no cruelty in her voice. She was stating facts, and she did it with the same calm tone a teacher might use when explaining something simple. She went through 3 more predators the same way. Each one was deadly, each one was impressive, and each one had a wall it could not climb past. 2 specialized. 2 dependent on one environment, one strategy, one set of conditions. Take away the darkness and the night hunter was blind. Remove the water and the aquatic killer suffocated. Change the temperature, shift the terrain, alter one variable, and the perfect predator became ordinary. Then Lena cleared the hologram and pulled up something new. It was a planet, blue and green and white, spinning slowly in the projected light. Several delegates leaned forward. "This is Earth," Lena said, "my homeworld." She began to show them. Deserts where the ground temperature reached 70 degrees and nothing grew for 1,000 miles. Frozen plains where the air itself could kill in minutes. Oceans so deep that the pressure would crush starship hulls. Jungles so thick that sunlight never reached the floor. Volcanic ridges where the ground split open and liquid rock poured out like blood. Mountains so high that there was not enough air to breathe at the top. "Earth is not a gentle world," Lena said, "and it did not produce gentle things." She showed them the predators. Not 1, not 2, dozens of them, each one dominant in its own territory, each one a perfect killing machine built for a specific hell. The saltwater crocodile appeared first, 17 feet long, jaws that could snap bone like dry wood, a body design so effective that it had not changed in 200 million years. Evolution had looked at it and decided there was nothing left to improve. The orca came next, a creature that hunted in coordinated teams, used sound as a weapon, and had been documented killing great white sharks just to eat their livers. It taught its young how to hunt, passing techniques from one generation to the next like a culture of death. The Komodo dragon, slow, patient, venomous. It would bite its prey once and then follow it for days, walking calmly behind the dying animal as the venom and bacteria broke down its body from the inside. It did not need to be fast. It just needed to wait. The African wild dog, small, lean, and relentless, with a hunt success rate that dwarfed every other land predator on Earth. When they chased something, they almost never failed. They ran their prey to exhaustion and tore it apart while it was still alive. The room was very quiet now. Lena showed them more. The box jellyfish, whose venom could stop a heart in 2 minutes. The cone snail, a small shell on the ocean floor that fired a poison harpoon fast enough to catch fish. The polar bear, which hunted across frozen wastelands that would kill most living things in hours. The peregrine falcon, which dropped out of the sky at speeds that would break the bones of any creature it struck. She showed them all of it, one predator after another, filling the holographic display with an endless parade of things that killed in every environment, at every temperature, in every ocean and forest and desert and ice field on her world. Threxvalon found his voice. How many apex predators does your world have? Depends on how you count, Lena said. Hundreds at least. Every ecosystem on Earth has its own dominant killer. Most of them have several. The silence in the chamber was not the respectful silence of admiration. It was the silence of creatures who were beginning to realize that the world this woman came from was not normal. Most planets in the galaxy produced 1 or 2 apex predators. Earth produced them the way other worlds produced weather. Dorvac spoke slowly. Your world is a death planet. We just call it home, Lena said. Threxvalon stood from his chair, trying to regain control of the room. His voice was steady, but his mandibles betrayed him, clicking in a pattern that Lena had learned meant anxiety. This is an impressive catalog, Captain, but the summit requires a single entry. Which of these creatures is your submission? Lena looked at him. She looked at Dorvax. She looked at Sylvan, whose bioluminescence was flickering like a candle in wind. Then she smiled that smile again, the one that showed teeth. None of them, she said. I haven't gotten to Earth's apex predator yet. She turned off the projector and walked off the platform, leaving the room in a silence so deep it felt like the void outside the station walls. Lena asked for 1 hour before her final presentation. She said she wanted the room to think about what they had seen. Threxvalon wanted to deny the request, but the rules were clear, and the human had read them more carefully than anyone expected. He granted the hour and watched her walk out of the chamber with her hands in her pockets, whistling a tune he did not recognize. During that hour, the station buzzed with conversation. Delegates gathered in corridors and eating halls, talking over each other in a dozen translated languages. The Cretharians argued that the human was playing a political game, stretching her time to build false drama. The Gorvathi said nothing, but Dorvax sat alone in a corner, arms crossed, thinking. Sylvan tried to access Earth's biological databases through the station network and found that the files were enormous, so large that her search system returned thousands of results for apex predator alone. She stopped reading after the 14th entry. Her hands were shaking. When the hour ended, Lena returned to the chamber. Every seat was filled. Delegates who had not bothered attending the earlier sessions were now pressed against the walls, standing in rows, watching. The holographic projector hummed softly in the center of the room, waiting. Lena stood on the platform and looked out at them all. She did not rush. She let the silence build until it was almost uncomfortable, and then she spoke. Yesterday I showed you the killers of Earth, she said. The crocodile, the orca, the wild dog, all of them. Every one of those creatures is a masterpiece. Every one of them sits at the top of its food chain, and every one of them has something in common. She activated the projector. A simple image appeared, not a hologram this time, but an old photograph, flat and faded with age. It showed a wide golden plain under a white sky. In the center of the image, a small figure walked upright on two legs, carrying a long stick. "They all answer to this," Lena said. The room studied the image. The figure was small, thin. It had no armor, no claws. No visible weapons beyond the stick. Its skin was bare and dark from sun exposure. It walked with a steady, unhurried stride across open ground where anything could see it and anything could attack it. A young Cretharian delegate made a sound that, in his language, was close to a laugh. "That is your apex predator. It looks like prey." Lena nodded. "It does, doesn't it? No fangs, no venom glands, no natural armor, flat teeth made for chewing plants, thin skin that cuts and bruises easily. Compared to everything else on our planet, this animal looks like a mistake." She changed the image. A thermal scan appeared, showing the same figure, now identified clearly as a human walking across the plain. Behind it, far in the distance, a large four-legged animal was running. "This is called persistence hunting," Lena said. "It is what humans were built for. We cannot outrun almost anything on our planet. The animal behind this hunter is a kudu. It runs at nearly 70 kilometers per hour. A human, at best, runs at 20. The kudu is faster in every way." She advanced the image. 2 hours had passed in the recording. The kudu was still ahead, but it had slowed. The human had not. "But the kudu has a problem," Lena said. "It cools itself by panting. When it runs, it generates heat faster than it can release it. So it has to stop. It has to rest. And every time it stops, the human gets closer." 4 hours. The kudu was walking now, sides heaving, tongue hanging from its mouth. The human was still moving at the same steady pace. It had not stopped once. "Humans cool themselves by sweating," Lena said. "We can regulate our body temperature while moving. We have long legs designed for efficiency over distance. Large tendons that store and release energy like springs. We were not built for speed. We were built to never stop." 6 hours. The kudu had collapsed in the shade of a thin tree. It could not run anymore. Its body had overheated. The human walked up to it slowly, breathing hard but still standing, still moving, still alive. "This is what we did before tools," Lena said quietly. "Before spears and fire and language. We simply followed things until they could not move anymore. We walked our prey to death." The room was absolutely silent. Lena changed the display again. Now it showed a series of images, cave paintings, ancient carvings, archaeological reconstructions. Humans working together. Humans digging pits and covering them with branches. Humans studying animal tracks in mud. Humans sharpening sticks by firelight. "But we did not stay simple for long," she said. "Humans have the largest brain-to-body ratio of any predator on Earth. We do not just react. We plan. We predict. We watch an animal for weeks to learn where it goes, what it eats, when it sleeps. Then we set a trap exactly where it will be and wait." She showed them the progression. Stone tools, rough and ugly, chipped from flint by hands that would grow more skilled with every generation. Spears, thrown with a shoulder joint that had evolved specifically for the act of throwing, the only species on Earth with that adaptation. Bows that could kill from 100 meters. Poisons extracted from plants and frogs and insects, smeared on arrow tips. "No claws," Lena said. "So we made knives. No venom, so we made poison. No armor." She paused. "So we made walls, and then castles, and then bunkers, and then warships." She accelerated through the images now. Bronze swords, iron armor, gunpowder, rifles, tanks rolling across mud fields, aircraft screaming through gray skis, warheads arcing through the upper atmosphere, orbital platforms hanging in the black. The speed of it was dizzying. The gap between a stone knife and a nuclear weapon was, in evolutionary terms, barely a heartbeat. Several delegates shifted in their seats. Dorvax's thick fingers had tightened on the arms of his chair. Lena slowed down. She returned to the simple things. "We also hunt in groups," she said. Not like the Iron Maw no offense delegate Dorvax which coordinates through instinct and simple calls. Humans coordinate through language, complex adaptive real-time communication. We assign roles. One group drives the prey, another waits in ambush. A third blocks the escape route. We change the plan mid-hunt based on what the animal does. No other predator on Earth can do this. She paused and let the room absorb this. Then she added, almost casually, the detail that would stay with the delegates long after the summit ended. "There is one more thing," she said. "Most predators hunt because they are hungry. When they are full, they stop, they rest, they wait until the hunger returns." She looked around the room. "Humans do not work that way. When we hunt, our brains release chemicals that make us feel good. Our heart rate increases, our senses sharpen, we feel excitement, satisfaction, joy." She let that word hang in the air. "We enjoy it," she said. "The chase, the strategy, the kill. Our biology rewards us for hunting. Even when we are not hungry, even when we do not need to, the act itself is the reward." Dorvax spoke from his seat. His voice was low and rough. "Your kind hunted with pleasure." Lena met his eyes. "We mounted the heads of our kills on our walls," she said, "as decoration. We kept their skins as trophies. We told stories about the hunt to our children so they would want to do it too. We turned killing into culture." Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The chamber had the feeling of a room full of creatures who had just realized that the small, smiling animal standing before them was not what they had assumed. Threx Valon broke the silence. He stood slowly, his full 9 feet of height drawing every eye. His voice was controlled, but the mandibles gave him away again, clicking in fast, tight patterns. "You are claiming," he said, "that the apex predator of your world is your own species." "Yes," Lena said. "And these other predators you showed us, the crocodile, the orca, the venomous creatures, the pack hunters, all of them exist alongside your kind." "They used to," Lena said. Her voice was quiet now, and somehow that made it worse. "We hunted many of them to extinction. The ones that survive do so because we decided to let them. We control every ecosystem on our planet. Every apex predator on Earth exists at our mercy. Some of them we keep in enclosures so our children can look at them for entertainment." She turned off the projector. The chamber returned to its normal light, but it did not feel normal anymore. "The deadliest predator on Earth is not a creature with claws or venom or electric organs," Lena said. "It is a 5'9" primate that sweats when it runs and has to cook its food before eating it. And it conquered a planet full of monsters because it refused to stop, refused to stay down, and refused to accept that anything was above it on the chain." She stepped off the platform and walked back to her seat, leaving behind a room full of the galaxy's most powerful species sitting in complete and total silence. The arguments lasted for 3 hours after Lena's presentation. Some delegates were angry, others were skeptical. A few sat quietly and said nothing at all, which worried Threx Valon more than the shouting. The Cretharian position was simple. Words were not proof. Any species could stand on a platform and tell a good story. The summit required evidence, demonstration, measurable results. Threx Valon said this to the full chamber in a voice that was calm and measured, but his mandibles had not stopped clicking since Lena sat down. Dorvax surprised everyone by agreeing. Not because he doubted the human, his expression suggested something closer to the opposite, but because the Gorvathi believed that strength must be shown, not described. A warrior who only spoke of battle was no warrior at all. So Threx Valon invoked the Predator Trial. It was an old rule, written into the Summit Charter centuries ago. Any presenting species could request or be challenged to a live demonstration. The station had a biohabitat simulation deck, a massive controlled environment that could recreate alien ecosystems with real physical conditions. Temperature, terrain, weather, hostile fauna, all of it real enough to test any creature's limits. The holographic targets could not truly kill, but the cold could freeze, the heat could burn, and the rocks could break bones. The rules were straightforward. The predator would be placed in a wilderness simulation. It had 30 hours to survive, locate and neutralize 5 target organisms hidden throughout the environment, and return to the extraction point. No outside help, no technology, only what the predator brought with it. Threxvalon announced the trial with the air of someone laying a trap. He expected Lena to refuse, to admit that a human without weapons and armor was just a soft animal in a hard universe. Lena did not refuse. "Sure," she said, and the way she said it, like someone accepting an invitation to lunch, made Sylvan's bioluminescence flicker with something between admiration and fear. The simulation deck was activated, and the other species were given the opportunity to run their predators through first. The environment was set to a mixed biome, forest transitioning to rocky highland, with a river cutting through the center, temperature dropping to near freezing at night and rising to dry heat during the day. It was designed to test versatility, not just strength. The Cretharian Scarvex went first. It was magnificent in the dark forests, gliding between trees, sensing its targets through electrical fields, striking with lethal precision. It neutralized 3 targets in 8 hours. Then night fell and the temperature dropped. By hour 12, the Scarvex had slowed to a crawl. Its electrical organs were misfiring. By hour 14, it curled into a motionless ball under a rock shelf and stopped moving entirely. The Cretharian technicians extracted it in silence. The Gorvathi Ironmaw entered next. It was powerful and aggressive, smashing through underbrush, using tremor strikes to flush targets from hiding. It cleared the first 2 targets quickly, but at the river it stopped. The water was deep and fast-moving, and the Ironmaw was too heavy and too rigid to swim. It paced the riverbank for 4 hours, growing increasingly agitated, before the Gorvathi team called it back. 3 targets remained on the other side, untouched. The Melurian abyssal thorn could not even enter the simulation. It required deep ocean pressure to survive. Sylvan watched the other trials from the observation gallery with her arms wrapped around herself, her light dim and steady. 4 other species ran their predators through. A venomous flyer from the Tessic Confederation managed 4 targets but was caught in a sudden rainstorm and could not fly with wet wings. A burrowing acid spitter from the Drellian Collective cleared 2 targets before the rocky highland terrain made burrowing impossible. None of them completed the trial. Then it was Lena's turn. She appeared at the entrance to the simulation deck wearing the same gray uniform, now stripped down to a base layer. No shoes, no tools, no weapons. Council rules stated that the predator must use only its natural capabilities, what it was born with and what it could find. A Cretharian official scanned her. No concealed technology, no enhancements, she is baseline biological. Lena stretched her arms above her head, rolled her neck, and tied her hair back with a strip of fabric torn from her sleeve. She looked up at the observation gallery, where every delegate in the station was pressed against the glass. She winked. Then she walked in. The first thing she did was find a river stone with a sharp edge. She tested it against her thumb, drawing a thin line of red blood, and nodded. Within 20 minutes, she had used the stone to cut a branch from a sapling and strip it into a rough spear. It was crude. It was ugly. It would work. The observation gallery was quiet. "She is making tools," a Cretharian scientist said, as though announcing something impossible. "From rocks," another added, in a voice that suggested the universe had stopped making sense. By hour 3, Lena had built a fire. She used the sharp stone to strike against a piece of iron-heavy rock she found near the riverbank, sending sparks into a nest of dry grass and thin bark she had collected. The grass caught. She blew on it gently, feeding it twigs, then larger sticks, then branches, until a steady flame burned in a small pit she had dug with her hands. The reaction in the gallery was immediate. Several species physically recoiled from the observation glass. Fire was one of the most destructive forces in nature. On most worlds, it was something to flee from, not something a living creature could create and control with its bare hands. She made fire, Dorvax said. It was not a question. She made fire, Sylvan confirmed in a whisper. Lena cooked a root vegetable she had found near the river. She ate it slowly, sitting beside her fire, staring into the darkness of the forest beyond. She looked calm. She looked like she was enjoying herself. By hour 8, she had located her first target, a holographic construct designed to behave like a fast-moving herbivore. She did not chase it. Instead, she studied its tracks in the mud near the river, followed them to a game trail, and identified a narrow gap between two fallen trees where the trail funneled into a tight space. She built a deadfall trap, a heavy rock balanced on a stick trigger, and covered her tracks. Then she moved 50 meters away, sat down with her back against a tree, and waited. She waited for 6 hours. She did not move. She barely blinked. "She is not doing anything," a Tessic delegate said, confused. Dorvax shook his head slowly. "She is doing the most dangerous thing a predator can do. She is being patient." The target walked into the trap at hour 14. The deadfall dropped, target neutralized. Lena retrieved her spear and moved on. She tracked the second target by identifying claw marks on bark, marks the construct had been programmed to leave as part of its behavioral simulation. She cornered it in a rocky alcove and drove the spear through it in a single thrust. Night fell again. The temperature dropped below freezing. Lena built another fire, larger this time, and arranged rocks around it to reflect heat toward a shelter she had made from branches and broad leaves. She slept in 2-hour intervals, waking to feed the fire, then sleeping again. Her body temperature never dropped to dangerous levels. By morning, she had 3 targets left. She crossed the river at hour 20, the same river that had stopped the iron maw. She did it by hyperventilating for 30 seconds to raise her core temperature, then wading through chest-deep freezing water, moving fast, her jaw clenched and her breath coming in sharp bursts. On the other side, she jogged in circles for 5 minutes, arms pumping, forcing blood to her extremities until the color returned to her skin. A Melurian medical officer monitoring her vitals spoke to no one in particular. Her core temperature dropped 4 degrees in the crossing. She brought it back within 6 minutes through voluntary physical activity. He paused. That should not be possible. Target 4 was taken with a thrown spear from 12 meters. The spear flew straight and hit the construct in center mass with enough force to pin it to a tree. The gallery went silent at the throw. A Cretharian biomechanics expert began pulling up files on human shoulder anatomy and did not speak for the rest of the trial. Target 5 was the hardest, a construct designed to behave like an ambush predator, hiding in dense undergrowth. Lena found it by listening. She stood motionless in a clearing for 20 minutes, head tilted, eyes scanning, sorting through every sound the forest made until she identified one that did not belong. She approached the hiding spot from downwind, circled it, confirmed the position, and drove her spear into the undergrowth with a short, brutal strike. 5 targets, 27 hours, 3 hours ahead of the deadline. Lena walked out of the simulation deck and sat down cross-legged on the floor in front of the observation gallery. She was dirty, scratched, and tired. She was also eating a piece of alien fruit, something purple and round that she had apparently gotten from a vendor in the station market before the trial. She bit into it, juice running down her chin, and looked up at the glass where 100 alien faces stared down at her. She waved. Sylvan pressed her hand against the glass. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "You made fire with your hands. You made tools from stones. You built shelter. You tracked, trapped, and killed 5 targets in an environment you have never seen before with nothing but what you found on the ground." She paused. "Is that normal for your species?" Lena chewed the fruit and thought about it. Then she shrugged. "We have been doing it for about 400,000 years, she said. "Honestly, I'm a little out of practice." Nobody in the gallery laughed. Not because it was not funny, but because every single one of them understood, with a certainty that went deeper than thought, that she was not joking. The final session of the summit began 2 hours after the Predator trial ended. The council chamber had never been this full. Delegates were standing 3 rows deep along the walls. Species that had not attended the summit in generations had sent emergency representatives on fast ships. The feeds from the trial had been broadcast across the station's internal network, and the footage of a small, barefoot human making fire from rocks and killing 5 targets with a sharpened stick had spread through diplomatic channels faster than light. Threx Valon opened the session with a voice that was carefully controlled. He was a politician above all else, and politicians survived by reading the room. The room had changed. Something had shifted in the way the delegates looked at the empty platform where Lena had stood, and Threx Valon was smart enough to understand what that shift meant even if he did not like it. "The final deliberation is now open," he said. "Arguments for and against each entry will be heard before the vote." A Cretharian counselor stood immediately. "The human entry should be disqualified. The summit asks for a predator species. What the human presented is a civilization. Tools, fire, planning, these are not biological traits. They are cultural developments." Several delegates murmured in agreement. It was a reasonable argument, and it gave the room something to hold onto, a way to put the human back into a box that felt safe. Lena stood. She did not ask for permission to speak. She simply stood, and the room went quiet because in 3 days she had earned something that most delegates spent decades working for. She had earned the silence. "Everything I did in that simulation," she said, "my ancestors could do 100,000 years ago, long before we had civilization, long before we had cities or writing or agriculture. The first humans who walked out of Africa carried nothing but sharpened sticks and the knowledge of how to make fire. They had no culture to speak of. They had no technology. They had a body that could run all day, hands that could shape stone into edges, and a brain that could look at a problem and solve it in real time." She held up her hand and spread her fingers. "This is not technology. This is biology. My shoulder is designed for throwing. My legs are designed for distance. My sweat glands are designed for temperature regulation during extended pursuit. My brain is 3 times larger than it needs to be for my body size, because evolution decided that the most dangerous weapon on Earth was not a claw or a tooth. It was the ability to think." A Cretharian biomechanics researcher, the same one who had gone quiet during the trial, stood and addressed the chamber. She spoke reluctantly, as though every word cost her something. "The human is correct," she said. "I have reviewed the anatomical data. The human shoulder joint contains a unique configuration that stores elastic energy for overhand throwing. No other known species in the Galactic catalog possesses this specific adaptation. Their Achilles tendon functions as a biological spring optimized for long-distance locomotion. Their eccrine sweat gland system provides thermoregulation during sustained physical output that exceeds every comparable species in our database." She paused. "These are evolved traits, not cultural ones. The human body is, by objective measurement, a biological weapon system designed for pursuit and kill." The chamber absorbed this in silence. Dorvac stood next. The Gorvathi warrior had been quiet for most of the summit, watching, listening, forming his own conclusions the way his people always did, slowly and with great weight. "I have studied the human records," he said. His deep voice carried easily through the chamber. "What this species did on their world has no comparison in our histories. They did not just kill every predator that challenged them. They broke them. They took the wolf, a pack predator that hunted them for thousands of years, and they turned it into a companion. They made it loyal. They bred it into 100 different shapes to serve 100 different purposes. The wolf did not choose this. The humans decided it would happen, and it happened." He looked at Lena. "They took the horse, a prey animal that could outrun them, and they climbed onto its back and rode it into battle. They took the hawk, a predator of the sky, and they trained it to hunt for them and return to their hand. They did not just compete with the natural world. They consumed it. They absorbed it. They made every living thing on their planet either a tool, a pet, or a memory. He crossed his arms and his voice dropped to something that sounded almost reverent. My people respect strength. We honor the strong and remember the fierce. But what the humans have is not just strength. It is hunger, a hunger that never fills, a drive that never rests. They did not stop when they conquered their world. They built ships and crossed the emptiness between stars. They are here in this room, and they are still looking for the next thing to overcome. He sat down. The chamber was very still. Threx Valon looked around the room. He could feel the weight of the vote before it happened. He was old enough and experienced enough to know when a tide had turned, and this tide had turned so completely that fighting it would only make him look foolish. "The vote will proceed," he said. It was not unanimous. The Cretharians voted against, as did 3 other species whose pride would not allow them to concede, but the majority was clear, overwhelming, decisive. Earth's apex predator, the human species, was declared the deadliest hunter in known space. Not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most venomous or the most armored, the most complete. The predator that could go anywhere, hunt anything, adapt to any condition, and never, ever stop. After the vote, the delegates filed out slowly. Many of them gave Lena a wide berth as they passed, not out of rudeness, but out of something older and deeper than manners. It was the instinct that every prey animal in the universe shared, the quiet voice that said, "Do not attract the attention of the thing that hunts." A few approached her. A Tessic delegate asked about human hunting customs, speaking quickly and nervously. A Drellian scientist requested access to Earth's biological archives, already planning research papers. Dorvax walked past her, stopped, turned back and gave her a single nod, the Gorvathi gesture of respect between equals. Lena returned it without a word. A young Cretharian researcher lingered near her as the crowd thinned. He was smaller than Threx Valon, younger, with a curiosity in his eyes that his elders had learned to hide. He waited until the others had moved on, then spoke. "Captain Vasquez, I have been thinking about something since your presentation." "Go ahead," Lena said. "Your species conquered every predator on your world. You mastered every environment. You built ships that crossed the space between stars. You have overcome every challenge your planet and your solar system could offer." He paused. "What is left for you to hunt?" Lena looked at him for a moment. Then she turned toward the observation window where the stars spread out in every direction, thick and bright and endless. Billions of systems, trillions of worlds, an entire galaxy full of things that had not been found, mapped, understood, or overcome. She turned back to the young Cretharian, and that grin came back, the one she had worn since the day she arrived, the one that made every alien who saw it feel something ancient stir in the back of their mind. "That's the thing about humans," she said. "We never stop looking for the next hunt." The Cretharian left quickly after that. Lena did not blame him. The station grew quiet as the delegations departed one by one. Ships detached from docking ports and slipped into the dark, carrying their crews back to homeworlds where the news of the summit would spread in waves. The story would change in the telling, as stories always did, but the core of it would remain. There was a species from a small blue world in an unremarkable solar system, and they were the most dangerous thing the galaxy had ever classified. Sylvan found Lena at the observation deck an hour after the last ship had gone. The Melurian moved quietly across the metal floor, her bioluminescence low and steady, casting soft blue light on the walls. Lena was sitting on the floor with her back against the window, looking at nothing in particular. "Everyone else has left," Sylvan said. "I know, I like it when it's quiet." Sylvan sat down beside her, folding her long legs beneath her. They watched the stars together for a while without speaking. "Can I ask you something?" Sylvan said. "You always can." "Are humans dangerous?" Lena did not answer immediately. She looked down at her hands, the same scarred, blunt-fingered hands that had made fire, thrown a killing spear, and built a shelter from nothing. Hands that had no claws, no venom, no natural weapons of any kind. Hands that could hold a tool or form a fist or open wide in offering. "Yes," she said, "we are." Sylvan's light dimmed slightly. "But here is the thing the council does not put in their files," Lena continued. "The same thing that makes us hunt, that restlessness, that refusal to stop, that need to chase and overcome and push past every limit, is the same thing that makes us protect. We do not just chase what we want to kill, we chase what we want to save. We run toward danger for people we have never met. We fight for species that are not our own. We cross oceans and stars for the chance to help something that cannot help itself." She turned to look at Sylvan. The Malurian's light was flickering rapidly, the patterns shifting in ways that Lena had come to understand meant deep emotion. "We are the deadliest thing in this galaxy," Lena said quietly, "and right now I am offering you a handshake." She raised her hand, palm open, fingers spread. No weapon, no trick, no hidden edge, just a hand extended in the oldest human gesture of peace. Sylvan stared at it. She knew what that hand was capable of. She had watched it make fire, shape stone, and kill with precision that machines would envy. She had spent 3 days learning what the species behind that hand had done to every living thing that had ever stood in its way. 5 fingers, blunt nails, thin skin, a hand that could do anything. She took it. Lena's grip was warm and steady. She squeezed gently and then let go, and Sylvan realized that her own light had shifted to something bright and warm, a color her people only showed when they felt safe. They sat together by the window as the station turned slowly in the dark, 2 small figures against the glass, watching the galaxy go by. In the centuries that followed, species across the Milky Way would learn what the Malurians learned first on that quiet station orbiting a dead moon. They would learn that humans were everything the summit had said they were: restless, relentless, hungry, brilliant, terrifying. They would learn that the most dangerous creature in the galaxy carried no natural weapons and had to cook its food before eating it. They would learn to be careful. But they would also learn, slowly, one handshake at a time, that the most dangerous thing about humans was never the weapons they could build, or the fires they could start, or the distances they could run. It was that they extended the same hand that could end you, and they meant it when they offered peace. And that made all the difference.